Good afternoon and welcome to Awakened Wellness. Marie and myself, Jocelyn, we're here to answer all your questions, bring wellness into your life. This show is all about when self-discovery meets purposeful and lasting change. This is what we want to share with you, and we hope you enjoy the show. So we have some feedback and recaps before we dive into our first show.
And today's show is going to be How the Body Heals.
How the Body Heals. I like it.
It's going to be a little bit different, so we're going to go with it. All right. So from the Listening from Within show, I had somebody tell me they started watching and they started to do the meditation regularly. She can't believe how much, when she's sitting with her clients or patients, how much more she sees in what they're saying and more about them. And that's where it seems to be opening up for her. Where it used to be just you write down what they're saying and kind of go with that, but she's seeing a whole different story. So she thinks that's very cool.
I think that is absolutely
it's very
fabulous.
Cool. And she wants to learn more about the energy medicine and stuff because of it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Kudos. Yay.
Yeah, so that was cool.
Somebody that's listening and looking and watching and seeing what's out there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we're going to go over a little bit of that. All right, the next one is somebody who watched Creating Your Own Blue Zone. They've been trying, but they find it's really hard to stay consistent with what they know they should be doing.
Okay.
What can they do? Right? How can they make it stick? And I think for the advice I give anybody is they're always complaining that life gets in the way, so they can't help themselves. You have to define what life is and what it means to you before you can even try to change it. Because if it means something to you to go out every Friday night with your friends and drink and do whatever it is that you think you need to change, you can't fix it.
Right.
If you know that that's affecting your health, then you have to decide, is that my life and that's what it means to me, so I'm going to continue doing that, or can I make a different plan and path? But you have to define it first and really know if that's your path and that's the one you want to take in order to change it.
And maybe not such a big, huge chunk of change.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Little baby steps.
Can you adapt in that situation? What do you need to do for you? But to go out there and say, I'm not going to do it, it's not going to work.
Okay.
Because you're missing out. But if it's not what you define life as, you're not missing out.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah. So you just have to kind of dig a little deeper inside yourself, because to just go through the motions doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is one that happens constantly. This person has been diagnosed with cancer, has a lot of friends who practice alternative medicine, and the advice is overwhelming on how bad her treatments are going to be for her.
Oh.
But they're not telling her anybody she can go see that's going to give her a good option alternatively. And they don't have a personal success story, only stuff they've read online and how bad it is for her. So it makes it very hard because they're being very negative. And that's a struggle I see a lot. And that's really sad because you don't know, you have to do what's in your heart and you have to follow the science when you're doing something like that.
Correct. And I think too many people feel that by giving advice, they're helping you, but they're actually acting on their own fears.
Yes.
And then feeding it to you, which then feeds the monster.
Right.
When you need to be quiet and sit back and, like you said, look at the science, figure out what's right for you. Where do you want to be with this? How do you want to proceed? And it's almost like a lot of roadblocks.
Right. Right.
Interesting.
All right. How the body heals. Where we're going with that today. I've had a couple people bring to my attention that they don't know my personal story.
Oh,
and why
okay.
I think I know the things that I do and how I figured these things out.
Valid point. Okay.
So that's where we're going.
All right.
And this is how I see the body heals and what I've discovered through my journey.
Okay.
All right. So I'm not going to go way back to birth because that's a lot of work. But just to a key point when I started developing thoracic outlet syndrome.
Okay.
And it was after my second child was born. I didn't know it was the C-section scars that were pulling me down internally. I had no way to know that until I know the knowledge that I have now. Okay. So I started losing the use of my shoulder, and my shoulder started to roll in, and there was nerve pain down my arm all the time, and they just I couldn't, we tried physical therapy, my neck was like sinking down into my shoulder, and the pain was just unbearable on a daily basis. Then I had my third child, and then it just got worse after the third C-section. So then I went to see a bunch of doctors, and they told me it was thoracic outlet syndrome, and that they didn't have any options other than this radical surgery where they take out your first rib.
Yeah.
So 2 surgeons told me, do not do it. It was not a good idea. And I was bound and determined to be out of pain. I was barely 30-something years old, and my heart, I couldn't hold anything in my hand anymore. I kept dropping it, and the nerve pain, I couldn't sleep. So I found a third surgeon who said it was a piece of cake. He'd done it 1,000,000 times, and it works like a charm.
And you went with that.
I went with that.
You went with option 3.
I went with option 3. And he nicked my long thoracic nerve when he was in there. And I came out of surgery. I didn't have the nerve pain in my hand for the first time, but then my whole shoulder girdle collapsed.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. So it's a very rare thing, because the only way you can damage the long thoracic nerve is to go inside the chest cavity, because that's where it is. And there's really no treatments for it other than wait for it to regenerate or whatever it's going to do, if it is at all. So at that point, physical therapy was very limited. My options were very limited. They had put me in a brace to hold up my arm. They had me taping my arm up, whatever I could do. But my whole right side and the dysfunction in it was unbearable. I ended up with a dropped foot on my right. I was pretty much, yeah. I used to spend 8 to 10 hours a day flat on my back, because I couldn't sit or stand it for any length of time. If you see pictures of myself, my neck is very hyperextended, and there was a lot of stuff going on. So it was a trying time. It was a trying time. And when I found out that there was no cure, and they told me that I would probably be disabled, I really struggled with that, being 30-something years old and having such a tough childhood and coming through all of this. I just sat and didn't know what to do. And then one day I just heard this voice that said, you're going to help yourself and help others too. And that's when there was just this inner voice that had always saved me so many times when I was younger that came up. And that's when I started to just have a little bit different outlook, that I didn't feel so lost and alone.
Okay.
But then I had to do a lot of things inside myself, because now there's no options with medicine, no primary cares, no specialists, no physical therapy, nothing that's going to help me. So I had to start looking inward. And that's the first time I'd ever done that in my life. I didn't even know what inward was, right? So I had to assess my emotional state. I really had to think about. And the first thing I learned about myself is that if I pushed hard enough, I can find somebody that's going to see my way of thinking. And that was the surgery.
Okay.
So then I realized there's answers everywhere now, isn't there?
Yeah. If you look long and hard enough, it's going to be
find
somewhere.
Answers, right.
It's under that rock.
Right. And then the next thing I had to do is I had to see my body for what it was, not what I wanted it to be.
Okay. Where were you right now in this spot?
And that was really hard to sit in that. And I see that a lot with people, even with just heart disease or diabetes or chronic pain. They don't want to be where they're at. But that's what gave me the most power, was to be where I was at, because then I could notice just a little change and if something was working, because I was just so present in where I was at.
Okay.
I had to openly see what medicine was and where my options were or not. So to go around running from doctor to doctor didn't serve me, and I had to accept that fact. It didn't matter. And where I see people just doing that all the time.
Looking for that magic answer, that magic pill.
Sooner or later, they're going to show up somewhere and somebody's going to have that pill for them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I live in that world. Okay. Then my support systems. They were not there for many reasons. But the biggest reason was medicine said I couldn't get better. So what was I trying to do? Right?
Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
This is your lot in life. Live with it. Move on.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. And that was hard to accept, because I was in a situation that most people don't get into, and family members worked with the physician that it happened to, that had done it. And they supported him over me.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. So I wasn't even allowed to talk about it, because every time they saw me, they would have to think bad of him, and that wasn't going to happen, because it was the old school world. The doctor's always right. So I had to have done something wrong for this to happen to me, because he's the best surgeon in the area, and there's no way that could have happened.
Oh dear.
So between my support systems not being there and medicine not being there, it was a pretty lonely road for a lot of years. Yeah. Then religion, that was the next one. Right? What happened there? And God wasn't fixing me.
Yeah. Because again, it's within.
Right.
But we all think, go to church, put on your Sunday best.
And I already had so many bad things
healed.
happen since I was a kid. To be sitting in that situation, I was like, what the heck? So then, because exercise was my go-to when I was younger, I had to be willing to see nutrition and its role in healing, no matter what. And that was really hard for me, because we didn't have a lot of money back then.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was bringing up credit card bills because of my food allergies, and knowing what my body needed on top of that. Yeah. So I had to be willing to see more of what I needed, not what medicine kept saying was the norm. Yeah. So it was really hard. Yeah. And then I also had to take a deep look in a mirror and make a commitment to myself that if my situation was going to change, I had to change. So my lifestyle had to change, my behaviors had to change, the way I saw life had to change. And all the past traumas that were holding me back, I had to look them in the face each time, because I could feel myself retreating when they came forward, and then I couldn't be clear about where I was at with my healing.
Sidestepping them.
Yeah.
Hoping that they wouldn't reappear.
But when you're so present and you make that commitment to be so present with yourself, you can sense what you're doing is undermining your healing. And then it becomes really difficult to go against yourself, because you can see those gains every day. And the struggle I see with my work right now is my clients, even though they make a big gain and there might be a little side effect of pain in an ankle, they can't see the gain. They can only see the pain in the ankle.
They go right back again.
They go right back again. But you need to see the gains in order to keep gaining. You need to acknowledge them and be in them and keep working them. And sometimes a lot of baby steps make a big step. So you got to really be present in what's happening.
And be positive about it as well.
Right.
Not be just always well, I didn't get this and I didn't get that. I only got this far. No, you got that far. Look at that big step. Now the next one might be half an inch, but it's still a step forward.
Right.
And you need to be happy about that, positive about that, and use that to propel you forward again.
Right. And, there's this guy, David Goggins. He's teamed The Strongest Man in the World. He's a Navy SEAL, and he's written all these books. And he talks about how he uses his pain as his strength, and all his childhood stuff is his strength. And I'd have to say I did that a lot. Whenever there was a naysayer, that gave me the power to push past and know, literally, what the heck do they think? Because I am going to get better. I'm not going to be disabled at 30 years old.
Yeah.
So.
Well, who wants to be? I mean, it's not a choice that any of us would ever make. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that find themselves in that position.
Okay. Then as far as my physical body went, I had to become more present, and I had to be willing to get to know my body and what it's supposed to feel like.
Okay.
So that took a lot of learning about neuromuscular re-education. If you move your foot, how is it supposed to move? Is it supposed to connect with the knee? Is it supposed to connect with the hip? So I had to become more present in those areas in order and get the brain to try to reconnect and do things that it hadn't done in a long time. And I had to learn how I was supposed to move. And like I said, all those little pieces just added up to big pieces. I had to learn that not all exercise is good, because I was an exercise junkie before this happened, so exercise was going to fix me. But when you have any type of nerve damage and patterning issues, when you're trying to regenerate a nerve, there's a point that if you push too hard, the nerve goes backwards because you recruit other muscles and you start to overcompensate. So when you have nerve damage, you can only go as far until that nerve says, I quit. And it's a really fine line. So if you're not present, you're always pushing too far, so you can't get the gains you're looking for because you're going into the other muscle groups now and you're not. And I see that as a struggle for clients a lot, because...
That makes a lot of sense.
Well, it's because it's all electrical. So as soon as that electric starts to misfire, you're not strengthening what you're trying to strengthen now. So you have to be present, and the people with nerve damage have a really hard time rehabbing because they don't want to be that present. Nobody wants to be.
Yep.
But for me, it was a survival thing. So I was willing to go there. So I try to share my knowledge, and I don't expect people to do what I did because they're not me. And they didn't have the same drive that I had. But they've got to ask themselves, how far do they want to take it? What do they want to do with it? So it's up to them on how far they want to take their healing.
And at some point, you have to walk away from the regular PT and the same old, and realize that that's not helping either.
I think for me, I became the ultimate opportunist, and I still am.
Okay.
So if I were really frustrated, I might ask the doctor to go back to PD if it was available to me, and then they would show me something, and then something else would come in my mind that was better. Just it would get me unstuck. Same way as I read an article, same way as I bought a new gadget. I'm the gadget queen because I can do things with gadgets that nobody even knew you could do for your body. Because I'm an opportunist. If I'm looking for something and it shows up, I'm going to see what's in it for me, but it's usually never what it's designed to do.
Correct.
Never.
Yep.
So you have to be willing to be open in doing that. You know, I have people all the time say, well, I don't know if it's going to work. I go, well, you won't know till you try.
Till you try it.
And then when you're doing your arm, maybe it works for your leg too. Give it a try. Be more open and
That's so funny because I had purchased one of these, I don't know what you call it, but it's a neck support cushion stretch, whatever you want to call it. And I thought, okay, so I can just lay on the floor and my neck is supported, but it's also being held in a correct position. And what I found was, I can do this and stretch my hips.
Yes.
Oh, and then I found, my neck was really tight. I found this yesterday. It's so weird that you said that. And it has like a little flat surface on it. And so I put it on the carpet and I laid there and, you know, it said, okay, what feels wrong? And did a little bit of stretching. And then I went, oh, my neck. So I kind of went like this and it slid on the carpet. And I went, my neck is supported. So if I slide to the right and go straight and slide to the left, I was stretching my neck and it was supported.
Yes. That's exactly how it works.
That happened yesterday.
Exactly.
Love it.
Yes. I love it. Because that's exactly how it works. You just lay there and become one with yourself, and the answers just start to arise. And you don't even know what the answer is going to be. People want to know, and that's why they can't hear. Yeah. All right. I had to learn as much knowledge as I could and realize that sometimes there's only a piece that would serve me. And it came when there was a nugget in it for me. It was awesome because you can never buy into the whole picture because it's only someone else's opinion.
Correct.
Yeah. And I also had to learn that I was never without answers, but as long as I was looking, something would show up. And it might not be what I was looking for, but it always had a piece.
So always be open. Don't be negative. Don't have that wall up all the time. Well, it's not screaming at me that I need to do it.
Right. Okay, so now the spirituality piece. I didn't even know that existed because I grew up Catholic. It was a big struggle because of my background, and I had the nuns, and I had all of that. So when I wanted answers, I had to learn how to pray for answers without using the word God and without making it religious.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's when I realized I had this little voice in my head, and I started asking it to show me what I'm not seeing. Show me what I'm not seeing. And that's where I got asked to see what you need to see.
Okay.
Because you know more than you think you know.
Right.
You just bypass it with all the things you want that are here. So that's where that whole ask to see what you need to see came from, because I did not want to pray to God because of my background and everything else. So I started praying for myself to help myself.
That's okay. The source is within us.
I had to learn that because I was at a different place in my life. So then as the answers started to come, I started believing in myself more. And then I had to convince myself I was good enough to get the answers.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because it's this whole healing package. Because you start to evolve and you start to realize there's things, and then you feel yourself push yourself back again.
Can't possibly be. Couldn't possibly be that.
Who am I to know these things? Yeah. And then I had to become more discerning.
Discerning, I have to say, people say you must discern. You must have discernment. You must become more discerning. That is not an easy feat.
It's not, but as I would get answers, I would have these epiphanies. So then I thought every one of my thoughts was the right answer. Right? And I see people do that all the time. Right, because it's hard to decide which one is which, right?
Yep.
But there's
This
this
thought
knowing that comes over you, and there's this tingling
and you're like, oh,
inside.
be honest.
Yeah,
That's not the right one.
Then as soon as I started realizing we were more energy, I started to get more confused and overwhelmed. And then I'm like, what is this, right? Because you hear all these things. So then I started reading and following anybody who did it. Caroline Myss, James Van Praagh, John Edwards, all of them, Eckhart Tolle, all over. So then I started going to their workshops. And every time I would go, they would have like this little piece of the puzzle. I'd read their book and it sounded so profound. And then I'd see them in person and I'm going, ooh, not a person I want to be dealing with.
Okay.
Because the ego takes over.
Okay.
The only time you're pure is when you're with yourself and it comes through you clearly. Then society, the ego, whatever it is. I mean, I'm human too. We all do it. So then I started realizing I'm there because they have a piece. What piece? Again, the opportunistic part. Not to discount them.
No, but
when they're clear, when they're on, they got something I need. When they're off, I don't want them.
Yeah.
So you start learning as you walk this path that you realize, the guy that you were talking in the grocery store line just told you something you were thinking about yourself and you didn't, but he's not dressed right or whatever, you don't like him. He had something you needed.
Right.
And you just become the ultimate opportunist and realize that all your answers are around you. Yeah. So then over time, that kept evolving and I kept realizing that when I was with somebody and they were talking, I would get like a little feeling when they had that piece that I needed. And sometimes for me, things go in slow motion. So you might be talking to me and all of a sudden you're like that Peanuts cartoon, won't, won't. And then that always means something to me later, and it always shows up in another situation later that I know it's a little nugget that I need for later. Yeah, and it's always saved me later in life. So that's been kind of cool. So then when I started doing this work and that evolved, that's a whole nother story. I started calling it the body within because it is the body within us that we connect to and listen to and talk to, and
there's a whole machine. There's a whole city inside of us.
It's the whole part of us untainted by our existence here. It's just that clear message that comes through us of anything that's possible in the universe.
It's the purest form.
And the discernment comes from being careful because we were talking a little bit about our backgrounds and stuff in the spirituality piece, and I get very nervous going too mystical because people, because they start hearing messages, they start going into this mystical place where I'm more about just being us. Stay here, stay home. It's all here. You don't need to go outside yourself. In the beginning, sure, I tinkered there because I didn't understand it and I was trying to figure it out. But the stuff I know now, it's all in us.
It's all in us.
We are it. Yeah. We are our own. And there's messages everywhere. Yeah. So now we're awakened wellness. We understand that healing comes from all these pieces, not just one, not just the physical, emotional.
Right. There's not one answer.
There's not one answer. It's an evolution. And you have to define what level of healing you want to accomplish, because this takes you all the way to the time you pass. Correct. And the more you listen to that body within and the more you're open, you're going to be connected when you do pass. And you're not going to stay till your body craps out. Right. We're not supposed to be here that long. We're supposed to be ready when we're ready and let go. But we're so afraid and we have no connection to us inside that we stay until there's one last little inkling of our body that will run. And now we're getting over-medicated and all kinds of things. But we shouldn't be suffering the way we are.
I agree.
And we just have to learn to dig a little deeper inside us and see where it takes us.
Wow. That's a wonderful story. And I don't mean story,
deep.
but yeah.
I mean, there's so many facets of this I could go a whole nother direction with and how the different things have happened through my life. But Cassie, this was for you because she did ask me.
Well, I think it's really important. And
it is important. And for me, it was always hard to talk about because I think for the first 20 years, believe it or not, there was a lot of shame for me because I felt like I'd done something wrong. Yeah.
I certainly can understand that. We're both coming from different places. As you know, I have thoracic outlet syndrome. And so I was told that you were the expert. And I came to you for that. And little did we know the similarities. And when you started talking about the surgeons earlier, I was like, oh, I did that. Yeah. You're right. That search, that
Oh yeah,
search
because
for what you really want.
I
Nobody's
see
going to
people
tell you.
I just have a client recently did that with a diagnosis, and he's been misdiagnosed fully, but he found the person that listened to him and didn't even do all the tests, gave him a clinical evaluation. He was good to go because he wanted it so badly. He had all the evidence they needed.
And talked his way right into it. And we need to be talking to ourselves. We need to be, as more importantly, as you said, listening, because it's all within us. Everything is within us.
Yes.
And you need all those little pieces. It's kind of like going through an orchard and picking this apple and then that apple. And
I'm not saying you shouldn't use medicine, because that might be part of the answer you're coming with. Yeah. Your body within is guiding you to go to this doctor and listen to that one versus that one, because that one has your answer.
Correct.
I'm an opportunist. I use everything that's on the planet. I don't discount anything as a valuable
Well, we can't.
answer.
You could be missing the greatest
Yeah, but you
answer.
have to be present in who you are in order to make those answers right for you.
Right. I love it. Well, thank you for sharing that story, and thank you, Cassie, for asking, because, you know, we tend to gloss over where we're coming from, how we got here. But again, you also don't want to sound like, well, I figured it all out.
I'm
the great genius. And none of us have done that.
Out.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is helping me come to a different place inside myself. So I'm grateful for this show too. Yeah.
I am. Well, I'm grateful that you want to do this show. So we'd like to say thank you for joining us today and having Marie be able to share this part of her life and have you understand it and see if there's any similarities with you. So we will see you next time. Have a fabulous rest of your day.